German patrols reached the edge of Moscow's suburbs. Within days, divisions no one saw coming pushed them back the way they came. 6 months earlier, nearly 4 million men, the largest invasion force ever assembled in human history, crossed this same ground going the other way in a single morning. By winter, they can't take one more step forward. This is the story of how the war Hitler's own generals thought would take 8 weeks came apart in less than 6 months. On the morning of June 22, 1941, without a declaration of war, that invasion begins along a front stretching nearly 2,000 miles from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea. More than 3,000 tanks, close to 2,800 aircraft, something like 2/3 of the entire Luftwaffe committed to one single campaign. The plan has a name, Directive 21. It calls for smashing the Red Army in the border regions before it can retreat into Russia's depth. A knockout blow delivered fast, not a long march on Moscow. Privately, Hitler is said to have told his inner circle something simpler. Kick in the door, and the whole rotten structure comes crashing down. His generals build their entire plan around that idea. No real stockpile of winter coats, no antifreeze for the trucks, because nobody in command expects to still be fighting once the snow comes. The speed of it at first is staggering. Entire Soviet armies are surrounded before they can retreat. At Bialystok, at Minsk, hundreds of thousands of Soviet soldiers killed or captured within the first 2 weeks alone. Not every trapped unit goes quietly. An estimated quarter of the encircled troops manage to slip out before the ring fully closes, proof this early that the war won't go entirely to plan either. German tank columns push further into Soviet territory faster than almost anyone on either side thought possible. And yet the Red Army doesn't collapse the way the plan says it should. Beaten divisions reform, new ones appear out of nowhere. By August, the German chief of the Army General Staff writes something remarkable in his own private diary. Before the invasion, he says, German intelligence counted around 200 Soviet divisions. Now, he admits, they've already counted 360. The country they were told was rotten inside keeps producing armies. West of Moscow, at Smolensk, the fighting turns brutal and slow. Soviet casualties here alone run past 500,000 killed, wounded, or captured, among the costliest single battles of the entire war for either side. Soviet counterattacks are costly and mostly unsuccessful, but they buy something more valuable than ground: time. Weeks the Soviet High Command uses to reorganize what's left and pull in reserves from deep inside the country. The timetable built for a short war is already slipping. Then, in August, Hitler makes the decision historians are still arguing about today. Instead of pushing straight toward Moscow, he orders one of his panzer armies, the one aimed at the Soviet capital, turned south toward Kiev. His general in the field, Heinz Guderian, wants to keep driving east. Hitler wants Ukraine's grain and the industry further south first. The result is the largest encirclement in the history of warfare. Something close to 660,000 Soviet troops trapped in a single pocket. Guderian will later call it a brilliant tactical stroke and question in the same breath whether it was worth what it cost strategically. It's a staggering tactical victory, but it costs weeks the drive on Moscow never gets back. Some historians say this decision handed Germany away its best real chance at outright victory. Others argue the army aimed at Moscow was already so worn down by that point that a straight run at the capital in August might have failed anyway. It's a debate without a clean answer. By October, the drive on Moscow finally resumes and immediately runs into a different enemy: the roads themselves. Autumn rain turns everything to mud. Trucks sink to their axles. Horses, because this army, for all its tanks, still moves most of its supplies by horse, die by the thousands. For close to 3 weeks, the advance barely moves at all. By the time the ground finally freezes hard enough to march on again, it's already late November. That's when German reconnaissance units reach the outer edges of Moscow's suburbs, the closest this army will ever get to the Soviet capital. What German command doesn't know is that Stalin has already been handed a gift months earlier. Intelligence, including reports out of Tokyo, suggesting Japan has no plans to attack the Soviet Union from the east. It isn't the only intelligence reaching Stalin that summer, but it's a critical piece. That single stream of information frees up something the Germans never planned for. Fresh, winter-equipped divisions from the Soviet Far East, quietly moving west by rail while the Wehrmacht sits stuck in the mud. On December 5th, those divisions, together with fresh tanks and rocket artillery, launch a counter-offensive along a 600-mile front. Soviet General Georgy Zhukov has been building toward exactly this moment. The German army, exhausted, freezing, stretched further from its supply lines than it has ever been, has nothing left to answer with. Within days, the same patrols that had reached Moscow's edge are being pushed back the way they came. By the time the front stabilizes, something like 1 million Axis casualties and close to 4.5 million Soviet ones have already been recorded, in under 6 months, making this the deadliest single military campaign in human history. Hitler's generals promised 8 weeks. It took less than 6 months to prove them catastrophically wrong. Not mainly because of the weather, historians now largely agree, but because of overstretched supply lines, a halt order that came too early, a detour to Kiev at the worst possible time, and an enemy that kept rebuilding armies everyone thought were already destroyed. The largest invasion force in history had reached the edge of victory and found out it wasn't enough. It's remembered today as the moment the war in the East tipped, for the first time, against the country that started it.